Hey, Mr. Maldonado here, also known as Science. So in this video, we're going to be talking about energy flow through living systems, and this video is going to focus specifically on food chains. Alright, so let's get started. So first off, before we look at a food chain, we're going to focus on two vocabulary words here, which are producer and consumer. So these are things that we've talked about in the past. You've learned about these in elementary, and last year in 6th grade, you learned about these, but we use different words to them when we're talking about the kingdoms. So producers, in simple terms that you know already, producers are known as autotrophs. Remember, the troph is, getting that nourishment, and auto, they do it on their own. So these are autotrophs that produce their own energy within them through a process known as photosynthesis. Then we have the word consumer. Now a consumer, another word that you've learned for it now, is heterotrophs. So these are the ones that don't produce their own food. They have to consume other organisms to get their energy. Examples of this would be something such as a lion, a human, mouse, etc. So now let's look at a food chain and let's figure out how we're going to label it with the words producer and consumer. Alright, so how do we label the grass here? Great job. The grass is labeled as a producer. It's an autotroph. It produces its own food using energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water to produce glucose, which is a carbohydrate, and also a byproduct known as oxygen or O2 that we end up breathing in. What about the grasshopper? How would we label the grasshopper? Great job. The grasshopper would be known as a consumer. Why a consumer? Great job. It has to consume other organisms to get its energy. In this case, the grasshopper is consuming the producer. So pretty much anything after the producer is going to be considered a consumer. They all consume another organism. So the mouse here is a consumer because it consumes the grasshopper. The snake is also a consumer because it consumes the mouse. And the hawk at the top here is also a consumer because it consumes the snake. So here we're going to number off our consumers. The grasshopper is our first consumer, also known as the primary consumer. The mouse would be our second consumer because it's the second one in this food chain, also known as secondary consumer. Then we have our snake, the third one in this food chain, so it's our third consumer, also known as a tertiary consumer. And finally, at the very, very top of this food chain, we have our fourth consumer. The fourth consumer can be called the quaternary consumer, or in this case, because it's at the very, very top, it can also be called the top consumer. Alright, so let's take a look at three new vocabulary words. Alright, so here we have the first word, which is herbivore. Now, herbivore has a prefix of herb, which means plants. So herbivores eat only plants. The next word, carnivore, has a prefix of carn. Carn means meat. So carnivores only eat meat. And for those of you who have some Spanish background, carne kind of sounds like carne, which is meat. And finally, the last one here, the last type of consumer we have is an omnivore. And for omnivore, we have the prefix omni, and omni means all. So omnivores eat everything. They eat plants and they eat meat. So we're going to look at the same food chain as before, but now we're going to label each organism here as either an herbivore, carnivore, or an omnivore. Alright, so because herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores are types of consumers, we can't label the grass as anything. The grass is going to just remain as a producer. Let's look at the grasshopper. In this case, the grasshopper, it's eating what? It's eating a plant. So if it eats a plant, what word can we use for that? Great job. Here we're going to use herbivore. What about the mouse? Great. Well, in this case, the mouse here is eating a grasshopper, so it's eating meat, which would be a carnivore. But we know that mice can also eat grass. So in this case, because the mouse can eat everything or all, we use the word omnivore. What about the snake? Great, the snake eats meat, so because of that it's known as a carnivore. And what about our hawk at the very, very top? Great job, the hawk also eats meat, so because of that we're going to call this one a carnivore as well. So let's review these. Herb means plants. Omni means all. And carne, or carn rather, sorry, carn, means meat. Awesome, so let's go and take a look at two last vocabulary words here. Alright, so here we have the word prey. Now prey is going to be an animal that is hunted. So one way that I like to say, just to help me remember, is that prey preys not to get eaten. Alright, so that's what prey does. I was about to misspell that. Prey preys not to get eaten. Alright, so it's an animal that is hunted. Then we go to a predator. A predator is an animal that hunts, kills, and eats other animals. So now let's take a look at the exact same food chain we had before. This time we're going to label each organism as either prey or predator, but the key word here is that both have to be animals. So once again, we start with our grass, but because our grass is not an animal, it's neither prey nor predator. So this is just going to remain still as only a producer, which we know also as an autotroph. Alright, so let's look at the grasshopper. Now the grasshopper here gets eaten by the mouse. So because it gets eaten by the mouse, this grasshopper is known as prey or predator? Great, it's known as prey because it is hunted by the mouse. Now what about the mouse right here? Great job. The mouse is also considered prey because it is eaten by the snake, but we can also call this one a predator because in this food chain, it's also hunting, killing, and eating the grasshopper. So it's both prey and predator. What about the snake? Great job. The snake, because it's eaten by the hawk, it's hunted by the hawk, is known as prey. But because the snake hunts, kills, and eats the mouse, it is also known as a predator. What about the hawk in this food chain? Great job. In this food chain here, the hawk is a predator only because it hunts, kills, and eats another organism, in this case the snake. So we can call this hawk also the top predator. So if you notice something interesting here, there's a pattern here. The very first consumer will always be prey only. The very top consumer or top predator will always be just a predator. And every organism that falls in between the bottom and the top will be both prey and predator. Let's look at the food chain one last time to focus on the last thing we need to look at here. So this is the same food chain we've been looking at. Now what I want to focus on here, very specifically, are those arrows that you see going from one organism to the next. So the direction that the arrow is pointing, that's describing the flow of energy. Okay, it's the direction that it's going. So in this case, because the grass points to the grasshopper, that means that the grass's energy, the grass energy, is going to the grasshopper, not the other way around. Because I know sometimes it's a misconception and you think it's the other way, they're talking about who's getting eaten and stuff, but it's not like that at all. Okay, it's the direction that the energy is going from one organism to the next organism. Alright, so thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.